Okay, the Formal Gym Marathon program. There's 5 important elements. So we have the personal goal, we have the physical analysis, the rest test and respiratory analysis, optimal training schedule, and then the support. And they're all, as I said, really important. Now, here we go. Personal goals. And here you can see that it was actually the first round where Klaas came by to do his test and we analyze it. So if you have, the first thing you need to do is have a goal. Now the goal is running a marathon in this case. And it can be that you just started running during this Corona break because the gyms are closed and there's not a lot of other things you can do. You started running and actually you like running, which is good. We all like running here. But then it's important to get a goal. Yeah, so the goal could be, okay, how do I get progress? Define a goal. Running a marathon is really great, but a goal without a plan is just a wish. So how do we get to that goal? You can, as said, just go the volume way. We look at it at a different way. The way we look at it is a marathon you run in your aerobic zone, as we call it. And it's maybe a difficult word, but it just means that you're doing sports, you need a lot of energy, and your body is able to absorb enough oxygen to create all that energy. That's your aerobic zone. Your anaerobic threshold is determining your heart rate zones. Now, what is anaerobic threshold? So if you do sports, so if you sit, you have a certain heart rate, right? And if you start running then, you start warming up, then your heart rate will go up. At a certain moment in time, you'll get at a heart rate where you will enter your aerobic zone. And that is that your body is experiencing a training, that is experiencing that you're actually training and can absorb sufficient oxygen to produce all the energy that you require. Then you go longer and longer running, and you go maybe faster and faster, so the intensity goes up, so your heart rate goes up. And all that time, your body is able to absorb a sufficient oxygen until a certain point where your heart is working so hard, the intensity is so high that your body is no longer able to absorb enough oxygen. That's what we call the anaerobic threshold. That is the heart rate where you don't drop that because you have a maximum heart rate which is much higher, yeah, but you can't sustain the same pace for a very long time because your body is not able to absorb sufficient oxygen anymore, and therefore, for instance, lactate is going to build up. Yeah? It's that stinging sensation in your muscles if you're sprinting, for instance. Now, a 100-meter sprinter, yeah, is purely in its anaerobic zone, and that is fine because he only needs to maintain that for 10 seconds, maybe 12 seconds. That same sprinter is not going to continue for another kilometer. Why not? Because it's not possible. He doesn't have enough energy. The energy consumption is so high and the lactate buildup is so high as well that that's not possible. Now, if you're running a marathon, of course, you want to stay away from that zone. Yeah, so that's why it's important to determine your anaerobic thresholds. The other reason why it's important is that if you know your anaerobic threshold, then you know your aerobic heart rate zones. And those are really important. Now, if you are in a gym, so now the gyms are open again, if you take a cardio, say a treadmill in the gym or a bike, you'll see that anaerobic threshold normally is defined as you take 220 minus your age. And that should be your anaerobic threshold, which is complete bullshit. And it's easy to figure out yourself why that can't be true. Because 220 minus age, first of all, assumes that everybody at birth has a maximum heart rate of 220. Now we have tall people, small people. There's all sorts of differences. Hearts are different as well. So it's not that difficult to imagine that there's differences in maximum heart rates as well. That's one. And the other thing is it assumes that every year your maximum is diminished with 1. Your maximum heart rate is diminished with 1. Well, it goes down slowly, but not 1 per year. Yeah, so it's you shouldn't take that. So what should you do to find out your anaerobic threshold? It's easy. It's a physical test. Yeah, with a physical test, you will determine your personal anaerobic threshold because it's personal. Everybody has a different anaerobic threshold. Well, not everybody, because there's only a limited set of heart rates, of course, but in principle, it's personal. I had within the previous program, there were two friends, same age, same height, same condition level, more or less. And one had an anaerobic threshold of 156, and the other one had an anaerobic threshold of 193. Well, if they would have used it's a Stefan and what's the other guy's name? Whatever. Yours. If they would have both used the formula, there would have been training in the wrong zones, right? Both. But it also shows that it's really personal. So you need to test it. So if you test it, you know your heart rate zones, but you also know your VO2 max. I will explain what that is in a sec. And your marathon heart rate, and that's really important because you will not just train on heart rate, but you will run your marathon on a heart rate as well. And that is very comforting as well, because the heart rates you will know. You will know that you will be able to continue for a very long time. So mentally, that is actually a good support as well. Training on your personal heart rates ensures effective training. And that's a little bit to the point that Klaas made earlier. There's a lot of people that train on speed, for instance. So the amount of kilometers that they run and a pace that they want to maintain, or speed. But if you train a certain day and you have headwind, to get to the same pace, you need to work harder, of course, to get to that pace. Now, if the next training you go out and you have tailwind, to get to the same pace, you have to work a lot less hard. Yeah, but it could very well be that when you had the headwind, you were working too hard, to optimally train most effectively. And when you had the tailwind, you were not training hard enough. Same thing for when it's warm or cold, or when it's raining or it's dry. Yeah, all those conditions determine to a large extent what your body is capable of. How well rested you are is also very important. If you're not very well rested, your rest pulse, so your rest heart rate, will be higher. If you then go training on heart rate, then you will reach your target heart rate a lot sooner, and that prevents you from getting overtrained, going into the red zone. If you don't know anything about your heart rate, chances are very high that you will do too much at that time. Yeah? So training on your personal heart rate ensures that you train most effectively all the time. Yeah? You get most out of your training. Now here you see two diagrams, and there's basically 2 points I want to make. The first one is VO2 max. I already mentioned it, and that is a way of determining how much oxygen you can absorb in your body, but also what you can, how intense you can run, and what the time is that you can make on a marathon, for instance. How does that work? Well, we look at VO2 max, at the amount of oxygen that your body is able to absorb per minute, and we divide it by your weight in kilograms. And as you can see on the left-hand side, you see DNA 70% and training 30%. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depends on how you look at it, whether you have a high VO2 max or a high capacity of absorbing oxygen is to a large extent determined by your DNA. Yeah, so at your birth, it was almost already determined whether you would be having a high chance of winning an Olympic medal on the marathon or not. Yeah. Luckily, there's also a variable component to it. If you train very well, you can increase your oxygen absorption capacity. Yeah, but if you have at birth a relatively low capacity, and you can train how much you want, but you will never get to that gold medal level. Yeah, so to speak. You see that we take the oxygen capacity, absorption capacity, and we divide it by weight. Why do we divide it by weight? That's because if you are able to absorb a lot of oxygen, you can create a lot of energy, right? The oxygen is used to burn it with sugar and or fat, and that creates the energy. So if you can create a lot of energy, you would think, well, I can go faster and I can maintain a high pace for a longer time. But if that energy is needed to get in motion and keep in motion a lot of weight, then a lot of the energy gets lost in pushing that weight forward. Yeah. So therefore, if you are able to lose some weight, then your VO2 max will increase. Actually, it's an equation, right? So you divide the oxygen absorption capacity by your weight. So if underneath the number gets lower, then your VO2 max goes up. As you can see, it's a variable. So by training, you can increase it, and by lowering your weight, you can increase it as well. And that will determine in the end how fast you will be able to run that marathon. Now, underneath, you see the anaerobic thresholds. You see there as well, no link to performance. And that is a big mistake that a lot of people make. You think that if you have a high anaerobic threshold, so if you have a high heartbeat at which you go into your anaerobic zone, then you would be able to perform better. But actually, that's not the case. Your anaerobic threshold determines your heart rate zones. And on the left-hand side, you see D1, D2, D3. That is just technical terms that we use to actually clarify what the heart rate zones are. So D1 is mild, intense, D2 is quite intense, and D3 is high intense. But it's all still in the zone where you can absorb enough oxygen. If you go beyond the point, so if you go to the other side of your anaerobic threshold, then you're training more strength, I would say. But you can't maintain it for a very long time. Yeah, and that's the balance that you need to maintain. It's fixed to a certain extent. As mentioned, it will drop over the years. But in principle, if you do your test now and we determine your anaerobic threshold, in a year from now it will be still the same. Yeah, that doesn't say anything on the, as well on what you can perform. Chris Froome, the cyclist who won a couple of Tour de France's and some other cycling races, has a very, very low anaerobic threshold. He published his data 1.5 years ago. And I can't remember the exact number, but it's around 137, 138, which is extremely low. I haven't seen that in practice yet, and you don't see a lot of other people having that. But he can still ride up a mountain quite quickly. And now some say that's of doping, might be a little bit of truth, but most importantly, why he can go so quickly up a mountain is that he has a very high VO2 max. Yeah, that's above 80. Which I haven't seen in practice either. So maybe one of you will come by and will astonish me, but it's really high. So your VO2 max determines what you can actually perform. Your anaerobic threshold just determines what your heart rate zones are and what, therefore, the heart rates are you can train and perform most effectively on. Any questions in the meantime? Let me just quickly check because I don't see the... where's the chat here? Okay, chat. Now, if you have a question, feel free to interrupt, as said. Okay, so the whole idea is that you train smarter, not harder. Yeah, and what we have found, scientifically proven, is that especially in endurance sports and then say marathon distance, training in D2, in your D2 heart rate zone, is most effective. In D2, your body optimally utilizes all available resources to do the sports. Yeah? And therefore, you quickly build up your muscles and condition your endurance. Yeah? And because you get much quicker to the result you want to get, even within a training, you can shorten the training time because you already got to the result earlier. And because you can reduce the training time, you can shorten the distance. And because you reduce the training time, you improve your recovery because you can recover early. And also you decrease the impact on cartilage and tendons. And why that is important, we'll get into next. You see actually 5 lines, but the most important ones, the blue and the gray, you see up there. That's actually, if you look at the y-axis, you see the one is the moment where you will be able to run a marathon. And as you can see, there's two lines, the blue and the gray, they really go fast because your muscles and your endurance condition, you're able to get there very quickly. Most people can get there within 8 to 12 weeks, yeah, on marathon level. But there's other lines that are important as well. Then you see the red and the more orange type line. That's your cartilage and tendons, and they need much longer to build to the same level, more than 2 years. Now, most people don't want to slowly build up to marathon level in 2 years. And this is actually where it goes wrong for a lot of people in that traditional way of training, especially for the first marathon. As I said, at a certain moment in time, say after 10 weeks, you need to train a long distance. Your condition and your muscles are able to perform that. That's not the issue. The issue is then afterwards your cartilage and tendons need rest, but your training schedule says that actually 1 or 2 days later you need to train again, and that's where it goes wrong for a lot of people. Now, by decreasing your training distance, you're decreasing tremendously also the impact on your tendons and your cartilage. So there's less need for recovery there. So during your training, the chance of getting into an injury is a lot less. Now you would say, well, but you get that impact during the marathon, and then the impact will be bigger. Well, the impact you have during the marathon, that's absolutely true. But if you, after the marathon, ensure that you recover well, and recover well is just take a 2-week break from running, then you give your tendons and cartilage enough time to fully recover. Then there's not an issue. Yeah? The issue is not so much with that your cartilage and tendons can't recover. The issue is you need to provide sufficient time to recover. Now, again, in your training program, the training distances are limited, and therefore the impact on your cartilage and tendons is limited. Yeah? During the marathon, you have the impact, but if you then make sure that you provide enough time to recover, you can fully recover, and there's not an issue at all. Yeah, we have within the previous groups, we had various people that started training for a marathon, did it the traditional way, got injured, thought that marathons wasn't for them, then heard about this program, started with it, so well, let's see how it works. They all finished without any issues, and they're still running. That's the other thing the other point I want to make. It's not that they did it once and then they got injured and they never ran again. They're still running. And they like it. Yeah, it's a different way of training. Now, again, for a lot of people, Klaas loves long distance running. Yeah, and he still loves it. There's nothing wrong with long distance running if your body is able to cope with it. If you want to now train in the next period for a marathon, training by this program decreases the risk on injury. Now, let me be very clear. This is not a guarantee that you will not get an injury, right? Nobody can guarantee you that. Yeah? But the risk of getting an injury is a lot less. Anything you... No. No. Okay. Really good. Okay, 3. So we had the goals and the physical test. Now, what I say often is that breathing is free. You don't have to pay for it. We all do it automatically. But breathing properly or breathing good is priceless. And it's really true. It is in terms for your health, but it is definitely also very important for your sports performance. And why is that? Well, as I said before, training is king, but recovery rules. And you improve by recovery after training, not from the training itself. Now, how does it work? You see underneath, you see some lines. Let's start with the blue line. So if you start your training, it says start, and let's call your starting level 0. Yeah, that's where you start. Well, when you train, then you use up energy. Right? You're not creating energy, you're first using the energy to do your training. So you take a bite out of your energy reserve and you get to the point where it says end. Yeah, you see that at the below, there it says end. Now then we have a marvelous mechanism in our body that automatically ensures that we recover from the training. You see a recovery. And what our body does is, and I hope you can see actually the arrow, but it starts recovery. So it's building up it's filling up your energy, and the same is true, by the way, for your muscle cells. But it's filling up your energy until the point where you started, and then your brain thinks, he did a bit strange. Let's make a buffer, because your body always wants to be on the safe side. It doesn't want to ever run out of energy. Yeah, so it creates a small buffer. Now you see that that's on a higher level, and then you see start with a blue line. If you start your training on the top of that buffer, then you start on a higher energy level. Yeah? If you do more or less the same training, you're still taking a bite out of your energy reserve, but the bottom is less low than before, right? Because you're starting from a higher point. Then your body starts and do the same thing. So it starts recovering, starts filling up the energy, gets to the same point as where you started, and then think, did strange again, let's create another buffer. If you then start your training again, then you get less low again, and then you see that growing line, actually the line that goes up, we call that principle supercompensation. That's how you get more condition. That's how you can maintain the pace for a longer period. Same thing is true, by the way, as I mentioned, for muscles, right? If you train, you get some damaged muscle cells. The damaged muscles will be removed, will be replaced by new cells. The new cells are stronger than the old cells. And therefore you get stronger. That follows the same principle. So you get worse first from training, and then if you optimally recover, then you get better, actually. Now, you can also think, that's great, that buffer, but I don't need to get on a steep line up. I'm fine with going a bit slower. But if you wait too long, then actually, if your body thinks you're not going to use up that excess of energy, then it will let it flow away again. And then you get to the yellow line. As you can see, if you wait longer, you will start at 0.0 again. You get at the same depth. Your body will make another buffer, because you never know. Maybe this time you will use it, but if you then don't use it, you get the same mechanism. So if I would draw a line, then you would see it's a flat line. Yeah, so you don't get any worse, but you also don't get much better. And then the other line is what we discussed before. If you already start your next training while you're still at recovery, you start at a lower point, you will get to a deeper point. And if you do that a couple of times, you actually see a descending line. Yeah, that's what we call overtrained, doing too much. Now that is where a lot of people are. Now, if you know when basically the top of the buffer is, then you have the secret, then you know when to train. Now, in general, if you start with training, that is after 48 hours. So that means if you train on Monday, you recover on Tuesday, you train again on Wednesday. And then you take Thursday as a recovery day, and you train on Friday, Saturday again. Then if you count that, you're at 3 times a week. You're training 3 times a week, you see the upgoing line. You get the supercompensation. The yellow line is 96 hours. So 48 is optimum. After 96 hours, your body has ditched actually the excess energy. So that's accounts for almost 2 times a week. That's maybe what you sometimes read that or hear it. If you train 3 times a week, you get better. If you train 2 times a week, you stay at the same level. I always say, well, 2 times better than 1 time, and 1 time better than no times. But if you want to improve, if you really want to get to that marathon level, you need to train 3 times a week, but 3 to 4 times a week. But it's important that you don't put all the 3 trainings on the Monday, for instance. You could also say, well, I do Monday 3 trainings, done, right? But then you don't get the supercompensation principle. So that's why it's so important that you optimize your recovery. Now, what's the role of breathing in all this, right? That's an important role, because if you look at professional athletes, definitely professional marathon runners, but you see it in almost every sport. What do they do after a training, especially after a hard training? Yeah? Do they go party? No, they go and lie down in bed for at least 2 to 3 hours. Why do they do that? Because they want to optimize their recovery. That's, their body needs to come down, and they need to basically ensure that they get on the blue line, get as most out of the training as possible. Now, most of us don't have the time, right? You've done your training, you need to go to work, or you need to do other stuff. Yeah? You don't have time to go to bed, lay on bed for 2 to 3 hours, or maybe you don't even feel like doing that, right? How can we still ensure that we optimize recovery? That is by proper breathing. Yeah? If you ensure 15 to 20 minutes after your training, you adopt your breathing pattern and you optimize your breathing, then you ensure that you kickstart your recovery. You get much more out of the same training than if you wouldn't do that. Now, think about that. So you put in a lot of effort in your training, right? You do it seriously, you take your schedule, you do everything what's in there. Yeah. But if you know that if you 15, 20 minutes after your training, if you take 5 minutes to focus on your breathing, you will get more progress out of your training. It would be stupid not to do it, right? Because that's the case. If you train in the morning and you then go basically have your deadlines and work, what happens is without you noticing it, your breathing frequency will remain too high. And therefore, you're using up a lot of energy that actually should be using in creating that buffer. Yeah, so you will make progress, but a lot less than if you do your breathing. And I say it to all people, and if you join this program, I will teach you how you properly breathe and how you can do that and how you can test that you're doing it. With most, and everybody says, yeah, I will do it. With most people that at a certain moment in time, they don't see any progress anymore. First question I ask, do you still do your breathing exercise? And then I said, yeah. And then I know they don't. And if they then start doing the breathing exercise, normally they're back on track. They see the progress. It sounds weird if you're not into it, but that's how important breathing is. Yeah, so that's ensuring that you get most out of this whole program. Yeah, breathing. Therefore, breathing is free. Good breathing is priceless because it also has other. Let me just see if I can stop. Now, just watch this short movie.
Hallo, dames en heren. Ga allemaal maar eens lekker voor zitten. Want nou wordt het lachen geblazen. Oh jongen, dat is zo maf iedere keer weer. Want toen stond ik daar nog te wachten en toen dacht ik bij mijn eigen van... ik dacht als ik dadelijk op moet, dan zal ik wel keihard zenuwachtig zijn. Maar het is maf als je er eenmaal staat, dan... valt alles van je af. Nou, tempo zit er lekker in. We gaan gelijk verder met de eerste conferentie. Jonge mensen. Het is toch allemaal met die politiek vandaag de dag. Sta je dat toch soms in de krant te lezen? Nou, dan denk je ook wel eens bij je eigen van... Maar ook in dagelijks... Even wachten.
Okay, so Wawa, I know we were doing this in English, this was in Dutch, but if you listen to if you just focus on his breathing, what did you notice? And the second question is, was he getting better during his conference, or was it actually getting worse?
I thought he was getting better.
And what did you notice in breathing?
Yeah, it was always short and sharp.
Yeah. That's what a lot of people don't realize. He says at a certain moment in time, it's like, well, when I was standing on the side, I was thinking I will be very nervous. And he says, but when you get on stage, everything flows away. Well, if he would have focused on his breathing, actually, when he was standing on the side, he would never got into this situation. Because what is happening here is because he's breathing so fast, He's getting into a state where there's less oxygen going to his brain because the oxygen is absorbed by his bigger organs, by his heart and his lungs, because his body is in sort of survival mode. And because there's not enough oxygen going to the brain, he can't think straight anymore, and actually he collapses at the end. Well, if he would have been focusing on his breathing, it would have never happened. Now, this is of course this comedy, but I use this because if you focus on his breathing, also his the way he stands, right? He's standing with his shoulders up like this. You can't breathe properly if you're sitting like this, and that's what a lot of people do, right? If you're sitting and typing, a lot of people sit like this. I'm exaggerating now a bit, but then you don't provide enough room for your lungs to breathe, and that's so important, because that is making sure that actually everything is working nice and smoothly, and that is what we need at rest, actually, in order to recover. So breathing properly at rest, because that's recovery is when we're at rest. So when are you at rest? It's when you sit, right? When you stand, your body is very busy. There's all these muscles in your legs that are they're working really hard to keep you upright. So we're at rest when we're sitting. But then the question is, okay, what is then the proper frequency, for instance, when you're at rest? Can you just type in, or just let me know, shout out, unmute yourself, what you think it should be when you're sitting? How many times per minute should you breathe when you're at rest? Any idea?
I said 30.
30, I see 10. Anyone else? Meryl, any idea?
No, yeah, I would say 20.
20, okay. We get, it's a nice 10, 20, 30. Okay. Let me see what the right answer is. It's actually 8 to 12 times per minute. If you're at rest, you're breathing 8 to 12 times per minute, then you're in the right zone. Yeah, then your body normally works quite well, fluent, everything is fine. If you're getting to 15 times or more per minute, then you automatically get into your sugar burning mode. Now, why that is not such a good idea, I will explain shortly, but it is important to understand. So if you breathe 15 times or more while you're sitting, you get in sugar burning mode. If you breathe 20 times or more per minute, then your internal system, your heart, everything is working so hard as if you were running a 10K full on. Yeah? Which is that your internal system is working like crazy, but physically your muscles don't do anything because you're sitting, right? Well, if you have that half an hour, that's not a problem. If you have that a day, it should be okay. Your body is able to cope with a lot of things. A week, you should be able to manage. But if this is week in, week out, your breathing pattern, you're running a very high risk of getting into a burnout. If you look at people in a burnout, they all breathe more than 20 times per minute. And because they get exhausted by that, they don't get into enough physical activities anymore. And that's where you get an imbalance between your internal system and your physical system. That's basically what a burnout is. If you learn people how to breathe in the right pattern 8 to 12 times per minute at rest, and you get them into a physical training program 3 times a week, most of them are up their feet in 3 weeks. Not completely recovered, but then they get energy to do stuff anymore. That's why breathing is so important. Let me see. Here we go. Sugar burning mode. Why is that bad? Well, you see here a drawing where you see a container ship which represents fat. That's our resource we have. Our storage, energy storage in the form of fat. And then you see next to it a small truck, and that is glucose, sugar. Why the two different pictures? Well, if you look at everyone, whether you're fat or thin or anything in between, everyone has much more energy stored as fat. Yeah? So if you use that energy source, you can go on for much longer. Fat is a more efficient energy source. 1 gram delivers you 9 kilocalories of energy. A gram of sugar, 4 kilocalories, less than half. Yeah? But fat is also a slow energy source. Yeah? So when your heart rate increases, faster fuel is needed. And that's sugar. That's why we have the container ship and the truck. The container ship can load much more, but it's also slower to change direction. The truck can have less storage, but it's a lot faster. Yeah, a well-trained person has around 1.5 to 2 hours. I would say most people have around 2 hours of sugar energy reserve. Yeah, and that is why it's so bad. If you are at rest and you're sitting and you're breathing more than 15 times per minute, actually your internal system is working too intensively to get all your energy out of fat, and you get into sugar burning mode. Yeah, but you have less storage of that. And what will happen? I will show you in the next slide. Training and running in D2, then you have a nice balance. You get 50% of your energy need still out of fat. You need faster fuel. That's 50% sugar. That means that you can double the amount of time that you can maintain it. So if you're running in D2, if you have 2 hours of sugar reserve, then actually you can maintain the pace without putting anything in for 4 hours, right? Because you're only using 50% of your energy need in the form of sugar. That's why this is also important if you're running, to understand. Now, going into the fast breathing, on the left-hand side, you see full trucks. Let's say you have had breakfast, so your energy reserve is completely loaded, but you breathe too fast. You have deadlines, you need to do all stuff. So you open up your laptop, you're breathing more than 15 times per minute. That means at 11, on the right-hand side, the truck is empty. You need to refuel it. So you get a trigger from your brain to drink coffee with sugar, have some cookies with it, ensure that your truck is loaded again. So that's at 11. You see on the left-hand side, it's loaded, but you keep on breathing too fast. At 1, it's empty again, but it's lunchtime, so most people don't really notice it. They fuel it up with a nice lunch. 1 o'clock, it's filled up again. 3 o'clock, it's empty. It's the after lunch dip, especially if you consumed a lot of sugar and fast carbohydrates. Then you get your after lunch dip. So you go to the machine, you put in a Coke or a Mars bar, and at 3 it's full again. At 5 you're empty again. Fill it up one more. If you work until 7, you have depleted your energy reserve 5 times. Well, if you then get at home, you're exhausted, and it's very hard to then still go running, do your training. And the first time you probably manage, maybe the second time as well, but at a certain moment in time, you just can't do it anymore because you're using the wrong energy source for the physical activity that you're doing. If you're sitting, you don't need sugar. You want to get into the fat burning mode. And that's why it's so important to maintain a proper breathing mechanism. I can prove it as well. Now you see here a lot of lines, and it's maybe, don't get scared by all the lines. It's really simple to explain. The red line is the breathing pattern. The green line is heart rate variability. That's a very important indicator for how relaxed or stressed you are. The blue line is heart rate, and the purple line at the bottom is breathing frequency. Now you see here a person that has been sitting for 10, 12 minutes on a chair, and we have been chit-chatting, and you see the lines varying a bit, but they're fairly stable until you see in circle number 1, their heart rate really goes up. The breathing pattern goes out of the graph, and you see that the heart rate variability, the indicator of how stressed or relaxed she is really dropping to a low zone. Now, what you see is that the breathing frequency increases from 8 times per minute to 18 times per minute. And then the heart rate difference between proper breathing and stress is 37. So the heart rate goes up 37. And the heart rate variability difference is also huge, is 77. Yeah, so you see the heart rate pumps up, the heart rate variability goes down, and the breathing frequency goes up. Why is that? Because I created the stress moment. So she's sitting on the same chair. I didn't ask her to jump up and do 10 squats. I just asked her a question, and I created stress with that. And you see that her heart rate goes up by more than 30. Heart rate variability goes down. More important thing is actually what's happening in circle 2. So you see at around minute 7, we have the stress moment where all this happens. But then at minute around 9, 10, you see actually that her heart rate goes down, that the breathing pattern becomes really calm and consistent, and that you see the green line is actually maxing out to 99, 100. Yeah, what happened there? That's proper breathing. So she went from total stress at minute 7 to, I would say, almost complete relaxation at minute 10. So that's within 3 minutes. That's how powerful proper breathing is. And this also makes the difference in your training results. You want to be above, with the green line, you want to be above 70, because that's a very strong indicator that your body is fluently running, that everything is fine, and that is the zone where you will optimally recover. That's why it's so important. Yeah, this is the proof that proper breathing is so important. We go here, training schedule. Here we see class with Sander. You see, we have a lot of fun with the joint training. This is just an example. This was my example of my first marathon that I ran, just to give you an idea. So as Klaas mentioned, you see, I started at 11. Most people start around 10, but it depends a bit on your starting level. It could also be 12, but that is sort of the range. Then you see a heart rate, and then you see, in general, on Monday, I have my longest runs on the lowest heart rate. On the Wednesdays, I have my short run with a higher heart rate, and the Saturday is somewhere in between. And then you see the Friday, sorry, that's a short training on a really high heart rate. That's an intense training. But you could also do a strength training. You could do an interval training. I think most people actually prefer doing interval trainings. Why do we do those trainings? Just to increase your speed. To be clear, what I call the trainings that you really need to do are the 3 trainings on the Monday, the Wednesday, and the Saturday. Yeah, those are sort of the obliged trainings. The Friday training you can do if you want to increase your speed. If you want to take an additional rest day, that's fine as well. So you have to do the 3 trainings a week. The 4th training on the Friday, I would say that's of choice. You can also choose to do it 1 week, but if you feel the next week that you're a bit tired or you don't feel like it, then it's fine to skip that one. But you need to try to stick to the 3 trainings. So the Monday, the Wednesday, and the Saturday. Now, if you say, because of my week schedule, I rather run on Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday, that's fine as well. And you can also change that throughout the training period. But this is sort of what I would say a standard training schedule looks like. Yeah, as you can see, it's 6 weeks. You always get a training schedule for 6 weeks, and then dependent on your training results, then I make a second training schedule also of 6 weeks. The whole program runs for 13 weeks. So it's 12 training weeks, so 2 blocks of 6. And then we have the week before the marathon. That's what we call tapering week. Now, it's a special week in which we ensure that you will optimally load your energy system. So that means on the Monday, you have 1 more training. And then on the Wednesday and the Friday, you have a short training. That's just to trigger your muscles, but not use up a lot of energy, because that week we really want to use to maximally load our body with energy. Because what is happening is you have been training according to schedule really well, and then if you stop at a certain moment in time, your body is like, oh, what will happen? And it starts to, it feels that something will happen. So what it does, it clings on as much energy as possible. It's loading as much possible energy for what is coming. And actually your body is right, because on the Sunday, the marathon is coming. Yeah, but by doing this properly, you will have more energy than you can ever have imagined. Yeah? And that is what's really important. That will get you through to the end. Really important. But this is how I would say a standard training schedule looks like. Klaas, anything?
Yeah, that's also a really big difference with a conventional or a traditional marathon training plan, where you usually have a 3-week tapering period. Here it's only a week, which shows you you build up a lot more fatigue in a conventional training program, where you need to recover and build for 3 weeks, and here you can do that in 1 week. So that's a little bit an indication of how different approach of training this is. But still, whether you have a tapering period that's 3 weeks or it's only 1, it's always a kind of awkward time, You know something big is coming up, and now you tell your body, no, we're gonna quit training hard now. We're gonna chill out. That's why we have a training scheduled always a week before the marathon, to quieten the marathon nerves, and to have one last good training practice with everybody who's going to run a marathon. That's my
yeah. Thanks. Yeah, that's I think a really good addition to it.
Can I ask you something?
Yeah, sure.
If you use the schedule, would you advise to not do any other sports like fitness or boxing or stuff like that?
Very good question. That depends on, if you can remember, I had a slide on personal goals. It depends on, first of all, your personal goal. Do you want to run your best marathon that you can run? Then actually there's less you can do in addition to this marathon schedule. If your goal is, well, I just want to run a marathon and I want to be healthy when I finish, but I'm not so much concerned about the time, then there's a little bit more freedom in what you can do. So if you then want to do, say, one max, I would say 2 boxing trainings, that could be. But it will, again, that depends on your goal. That's one. And second thing, to be honest, it also depends what your starting fitness level is, I would say. So if you're really new to running, then you probably need to focus more on it. Whereas if you're really fit already and you're an experienced runner, then there's actually more degrees of freedom, so to speak. So it depends a bit on your goal and your starting level, I would say.
All right, thanks.
Yeah. Any other questions? No, we'll continue. We're almost at the end. So here you see, we use this photo as well for the post at Instagram. Here you see the training group. What I like about this picture is that you see sort of the joy and the fun that everybody's having. And that's an important part, I would say, of this program as well, where you have, of course, Klaas and myself to support you. Well, here I'm there. I always call it unlimited support. You can text me at any moment in time with questions or feedback or whatever. But having a group where you can also, we always set up a WhatsApp group with all the participants as well. And there you can exchange knowledge, you can ask questions, you can share your experiences. We've seen all sorts of different things, articles, even books, I think, that have been shared as well. And to me, I'm not sure how you look at it, but to me, that's I would say a bonus to the program. Actually, the peer support.
Yeah, it definitely is, because you're all doing the same thing together, so you can share how your training went. And if some of you are on, I don't know if you're on Strava, but you can see each other's trainings and comment on it in the group. And it is kind of it really works well. And you might think, oh, not another WhatsApp group. You can silence it, of course. But especially when the marathon is closing, is coming near, it proves to be a really nice sort of support system.
Yeah, so in short, I would say that support, as I said, you get unlimited support from me. You can always text me. We have the two, which I will point out one more time, but we have a kickoff session where we get together and do a joint training session to ensure that everything is fine, that you're running on your heart rate monitor is working, and you understand everything, and we can look at your running technique as well, give you some advice there. And then at the end, we have another joint training where we answer questions that you might have towards the marathon, and some last tips and tricks, and do a joint training as well. And we have a nice, actually, additional, which I won't give away yet, but that's really a fun training that everybody really loves. We always see. So that's the support system. Now, there's some what we call prerequisites. If you're asking yourself, is this for me? I always say everyone without a bad back, knee, ankle can run a marathon with this program. Yeah, it depends a bit on your starting position. Now, Normally we have a little bit longer where we start, but because of the whole situation, time is a bit limited. So you will have to decide quite quickly, and then we need to do your test and get your schedules actually up and running. But the normal thing that you need to get to is you need to have a VO2 max of above 40 in order to be able to run a marathon within 6 hours. There's sort of a relationship between your VO2 max and the time that you need to finish a marathon. Now, you won't know that, but we will know that after your test. But as a sort of rule of thumb, you can say that you need to be able to run a 10K within 65 minutes. Yeah. Now, if you are at this moment in time, say, well, I haven't run a 10K yet, but I can do 8 kilometers, say in 55 minutes or 60 minutes, then we can get you to the right level. To be honest, if you're now at 4 kilometers and you're struggling to get any further, then I would say that time is probably too limited for this program, to be honest. Yeah, I would love to have as many people finish it, but I want you to finish. Yeah, I need to be honest there as well. Normally we have a little bit longer, so we can train you up. I can train you up quite quickly to the starting level, but because time is quite limited, you need to be somewhere at this moment able to run at least, I would say, 7-8 kilometers, definitely within the hour. Having said that, both can be influenced by losing weight. If you're able to lose in a healthy way, let me be very, I'm always very clear on that. If you're able to lose 10 kilograms in a healthy way, it will save you an hour on your end time of your marathon. Yeah, it's how important weight is in this whole thing. Now, if you can't lose any weight, then of course you shouldn't go even lower. But if you can lose some weight, that is the fastest way of improving your progress. Yeah, that's an important thing. So if you would be sort of around not completely able to run the 10K within 65 minutes, but you're close and you would be able to lose some weight, then there shouldn't be any issue on starting this program. Just to as a rule of thumb, I would say. Let me see, what do I have? I want to get rid of that. Oh yeah, what you need as well, and that's really important. So everything I will show you in the next slide. I think the next slide. Everything that you will get. A thing that you need to get yourself is a heart rate strap. That is a thing that monitors your heart rate and basically pushes the data either to a watch, a sports watch, can be any watch that you can connect to Bluetooth normally, or an app. There's an app that you can put on your, there's multiple apps, but there's an app that you can use to basically register your heart rate, because with your training, if you want to know if you get a target heart rate, you need to be able to actually monitor at what heart rate you are running. Now, there's modern sports watches that take your heart rate from your pulse, and they say that it's really fine, you can do that, which is fine for recreational use, but definitely not if you seriously want to train on heart rate. Yeah, the difference between a heart rate strap is that the strap is basically counting the electric pulses that your internal pacemaker is creating. You get an electric pulse, and therefore your heart compresses. That's why your heart is beating. And the thing that the strap does is just counting the pulses. Yeah, just capturing that data. The way the watch works is that there's optical sensors in the watch that are looking for blood streams. Yeah, but if your watch is moving, then you get already errors in there, and it can be that it's counting a bloodstream when there's not, and the other way around. So actually the error margin is too high. What you will see running with a watch on your wrist, that most of the time the heart rate is on the low side, and it's quite bumpy as well. That's normally how I can see if people send me their training results. When it's really bumpy, then normally it's a wrist watch that they are using, even though they might think that they use a heart rate strap. Now, the straps are not that expensive anymore. At Decathlon, you can get a really good one for 35, 36 euros. Yeah, so that's not the end. If you don't have a sports watch, you can use your phone. But that's really important to get it done. It's a bit a pity that we're putting in a lot of effort to get your exact anaerobic threshold and therefore your heart rate zones. But if you then don't exactly know on what heart rate you're running, then that sort of defeats the purpose. Anything you want to?
No, yeah, just really because most people think I bought a really expensive watch, so my optical reader, but even €1,000 watches with optical sensor, it can easily be off like 10 beats per minute. So, and I've tried running with 2 or 3 watches with or without straps, tested it for a couple of years now. And in order to perform this program well, but basically every other way of running training, if you want to be training by heart rate, you need a strap. Every professional will tell you this too. The watch companies won't, but they know they're full of shit too. So
it's in the fine print. They will say that it's good enough, but if you go to the fine print, really you need to go deeper on their website. And normally they will say that if you want to do it more seriously, that they still say that the heart rate strap is the best way. But that's just what you need. And then of course you need to subscribe yourself for the marathon. That's maybe a good point before we move on. Amsterdam is still open, so you can just go to the website and you can register. That's not an issue. If you are still thinking about doing Rotterdam, they've closed their sign up, but they do have a marketplace where people offer their bib numbers, as they call it, so their starting numbers. I checked it, and it's around still face value what most people are offering it for. So it could be, but as Klaas mentioned, if you look at the site as well, they're a bit more cautious, I would say, of continuing. So therefore, if you want to be on the safer side, so to speak, I would go for Amsterdam, which is nice here at home as well, and it's a great marathon to run. Almost at the end. Okay, what does it look like then? And I hope I got all the dates right, but we're now on the 9th of July. Right, yes. So this is the kickoff presentation. We have a short period for sign up and testing because the official training program should start the 20th of July. Now, if that is in the week of the 20th of July, we're still fine. Also, again, depending on your starting level. If you're really fit, we can push it out by a week or so, but we really need to try to get that time frame as small as possible so we can get you optimally prepared at the start of the marathon. We get a kickoff. I've put it now for the 25th of July. We haven't discussed it yet, but that will be probably the date. Normally we do it on a Saturday. Then you have your training program, which runs until the 12th of October. We have an optional, which I put in on the 29th of August, which is halfway. We could do a Q&A session and a joint training. The last 2 times, people couldn't make it or wanted to train by themselves. So we always have the kickoff training and the tapering training. The in between, we can discuss. We're open for doing that. But if you say, no, I want to just during the training period do it myself, that's fine as well. Then, as I said, normally, say 3rd October, we have the Tapering and Mindset session. That is just to prepare you for the tapering period, but also questions you might have. We give you tips and tricks. We do a joint training session again. On the 12th of October, you have your last training, and you only have the 2 shorter ones that I mentioned. You need to make sure that you sleep enough and basically will fully load yourself with energy. And then on the 18th of October, we have the marathon. And what I always say, just make sure that the day after the marathon, you step on your bike and just do a small round wherever you want to, but making sure that you move your muscles around. So that's the time schedule for Amsterdam. People who want to run Rotterdam just start a week later officially with the whole thing because it's a week later. Then very quickly, another person that was part of this program, Crystal. She came on the program while she was actually at the end of a recovery of a burnout. She wasn't entirely sure how it would all go. but actually she also really worked well with the program. She lost, I think, about 10 kilos, and she finished her marathon, as you can see, very happily. And actually afterwards, she sent us a message saying, well, now she really found that she was out of her burnout, and she felt so relieved, and she felt so much better. And she's still running, and she's still doing events, and she's still enthusiastic, and so it really works. That's the reason I wanted to show her as well. There's so many other examples that I could have used, because the training, just the program is a really nice way. Okay, the program, what do you get? You get your training schedules, of course, but before I can make your training schedules, you get an intake with a physical and a rest test. So the rest test, you basically get the same graphs as I've shown you with that person that was in stress and with the proper breathing, just to check how you operate at rest at this moment, but also to show you how you can optimize your recovery by breathing. That's one thing. And the other thing, you can see I'm here in my home situation where I have a test bike, as you can see. I have one at the gym as well. We do a physical test on the bike to determine your VO2 max, but also your anaerobic threshold, and therefore your heart rate zones. I do that on a bike because it gives the most pure measurement, and because it's scientifically proven that your anaerobic threshold on the bike is 10 lower than your anaerobic threshold for running. And the reason for that is that on the bike, you mainly use your upper muscles in your legs. With running, you use your entire body. So your entire body is using oxygen, and therefore your AT is 10 beats higher than that, and it works really well. So that's included. You get after you came by for the intake and with all the tests, you get a personal plan, which includes, of course, the test results. You get background info. Everything that I've explained here, and even in more detail, will be in your document as well. You get your first 6-week training schedule. And you get a lot of advice in terms of mindset, breathing, nutrition, and sleep to optimize your whole experience. You get, if you send in your training results on a weekly basis, we analyze your training results, and you get your unlimited support, mainly via WhatsApp, but you can email me, you can mail, you can go to the training with class. There's a lot of ways you can do. As we said, you get your peer support, and that gets you a lot of fun as well. You get the kickoff and tapering sessions. Of course, you get your second training schedule then as well, and a schedule with the tapering week with tips and tricks as well. Let me see. Normal pricing. Now we get to there's always, of course, the price question. Normal pricing for the normal program, I charge 287 euros. Everything is included in it. Well, actually, if you get the normal program, you don't get the peer support and fun and the kickoff and tapering sessions. That's specifically to the Vondel Gym. But for members, Vondel Gym members, I normally have a 10% discount, which is 260 euros. But because we do this special program, it's a, I would say, one-time offer, special program offer, 199 euros, which is a little bit more than 30% discount of the normal price. Yeah, that is if you sign up for this program. You get everything that is included, but that we just discussed. You can you keep, of course, the document. As I mentioned, actually your anaerobic threshold won't change for the next 2 to 3 years, so you can actually use all the information for the time coming as well. And actually you will find that even in your personal life, you will have more energy, you will feel better. So it's actually a complete plan that you get for, I would say, a very attractive price with a nice discount on the normal pricing. And I think that's about it. Klaas, anything you want to add?
No, I hope you all join. No, I've just like as Martijn says, I've also been training in a traditional way for marathons, but I still use all the information about heart rate. I still use some of the trainings that we do in normal marathon training. You would call them tempo runs, basically. And so it's proven really useful. People always get a bit put off if they see anything costs money. But if you look at it from a perspective of small group or even personal training, I'd say $199 is really a bargain. And and I, just like I said in the beginning, I can really recommend this type of training. Get to know your body real well and get a great marathon result. So that's my 2 cents in there.
Thank you. I think, that was the other. Before, let me just go up. As I said, the way I got to this program, you might still want to wonder, sounds all nice, all the information and all the success stories, but can you really, with just 14 kilometers of training, finish a marathon? And I have the next slide that you already saw a brief sneak preview of, is my finish of the Ironman, where I trained a maximum of, I think, 13 kilometers, maybe 14 kilometers in running and 70 kilometers in cycling, where you have to swim 3.85 kilometers, cycle 180 kilometers, and then do a full marathon. If you can do, I would say, a full Ironman with this program, you can definitely do the marathon as well. Here I come. And you can see that I'm not sort of crippled or anything. Yeah, so it really works. That's just the whole thing as a last pointer. So I hope you're inspired. Last thing I have is a short clip on the Amsterdam Marathon. But this is basically it. This is the, let me just put it a little bit. Right. It is just maybe as a last point, if you have never run a marathon, it's just such a great event to do. You will never forget. I will never forget my first marathon. I'm sure Klaas doesn't forget his first marathon, but he also don't forget the next one. But it's such a nice experience, I would say, to just do it and be. I think I saw some data that less than 4% of all Dutch citizens will ever run a marathon in their life. Wow, how cool is it to be one of those 4%? And it's just, as you can see, it's just a lot of fun, and it's great to be a part of. Yeah, this is the finish. That's the best part, of course. Let's stop it here. Maybe one last point, just to make sure we provide you with full, honest information. With this program, when you're running a marathon, you still need to run 42K, and it will get hard, right? It's a great program, and as I said, everybody that has started has finished as well. But it's still 42K, and it will get hard at a certain moment in time. And whether that's 30 kilometers or 32 or 35, it will get hard. We will provide you with the mental tricks as well, how you can ensure that you can get it through. But this is not a button that you push and you just finish a marathon. That's one thing. Second thing is that what normally Klaas always says, it's not a walk in the park, right? It's short, relatively short distances, but for most people, it's hard work, because running in D2 is for most people pushing it. It's constantly pushing it. Most people, in my experience now, I think that about 70% of people, when they're running in their D1. So that's a less intense heart rate zone. Why? Because it's convenient to run in D1 and you don't think about it, but that's what you normally do. If you then need to train in D2, you need to push it. It's not impossible. It's not constantly sort of going into the red, because when you're in D2, you prevent going into the red, but it is hard work. Now there's also, I would say 70% normally runs in D1. About 20%, 25% runs in D3 when they normally run. They push it always very hard. They find it hard in the beginning because they think they need to run too slow. Yeah, but in the end, you need to maintain a pace for a very long period of time. So D2 is the better option. There's the only option basically to go there. And then we have 5% that naturally runs in D2. I don't know why the percentage is so short that people run actually in their optimal heart rate naturally, but that's from experience. Yeah, so assuming, looking at the bigger group, it is hard work. Yeah, it's short. The good thing about it is because trainings don't last very long, it's hard work, but you recover quickly as well. Yeah, so there's no 30-kilometer training on a Sunday. And as most people will tell you, if you train on a Sunday for 30 kilometers, first of all, that's a big chunk out of your Sunday. And most people then lie on the bank and on the sofa and don't do much anymore. Now, if you have your 14 kilometers training, maybe it takes you an hour, 15 minutes. Will be hard, probably. But you recover very quickly as well. After an hour, you can do whatever you want. Anything to add to that?
No.
Or any points I've forgotten? No? Klaas says no.
Say goodbye.
Okay. Any questions before we leave you?
I don't know if I've missed it, but is there, what is the deadline for signing up and how do you sign up?
Well, the easiest way of signing up is probably send Klaas a mail.
Yeah.
So that's klaas@vondelgym.nl. Yeah, and I would say the deadline, well, preferably as soon as possible, because if we can schedule your test next week, then actually you can start on the 20th of July, which would be the optimum. Now, as said before, if we do the test in that week, it can still be done, provided a bit that you don't start really from scratch. But that is sort of, I would say, the time frame.
All right, clear. Thank you.
Any other questions or remarks?
No, the presentation was really nice, a lot of information, so thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thanks so much for the info and taking the time to take us through it.
Okay. Are you considering of participating?
Yeah, I have to think about it a little bit, just with my work and stuff.
Yeah. Fully understand that. Yeah, so also for you, if you want to join, the easiest way to do that is just send Klaas an email, which is Klaas, KLAAS, @vondelgym.nl. And I will make sure that we plan you in.
Awesome.
Okay. Yeah.
Cheers.
Okay. Well, if there's no other questions or remarks, then I thank you for your participation and hope to see you, of course, as a participant in this program. And for now, I wish you a very nice evening.
Good night.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Good evening.